Hi gentlemen, welcome back to chapter 11 on infectious diseases in human. For 11.2, we are only looking at two things. First, the structures of a bacterial cell and the structure of a virus. So by the end of this video, you must be able to describe and state the different structures found in a bacterial cell, and you must also be able to describe how a typical virus looks like. So let's start off with bacteria. As we know, bacteria are microscopic. They are single-cell organisms typically known as prokaryotes. One thing that's different between bacteria versus animal and plant cells is that they do not have a nucleus or membrane-bound organelles. In animal and plant cells, one example of membrane-bound organelle is the vacuole. Despite its simple structure, bacteria comes in all shapes and sizes and can be classified in several useful ways. Common bacteria that we know of includes Streptococcus that often cause respiratory symptoms and in fatal conditions can cause pneumonia, and E. coli. A little bit more about bacteria. Different bacteria can thrive in different conditions. One way of categorizing is based on their oxygen requirement. Some bacteria needs oxygen to respire, while others can live with or without it. So those bacteria that can undergo aerobic respiration would need oxygen to thrive. They can also be classified by how they obtain nutrients for survival. One group of bacteria, known as autotrophic bacteria, is capable of making their own food. Interestingly, some bacteria contains chlorophyll, found in chloroplast, to undergo photosynthesis. So one similarity between bacteria and plant is both are capable of capturing light to make food. Bacteria can also derive energy from chemical reactions. Another group of bacteria are unable to make their own food, and they are known as heterotrophic bacteria. These bacteria rely on organic substances found in on all other organisms. So, for example, decomposers, bacteria that are decomposers rely on carbon that can be found in decomposing or dead organism. Let's watch a video to learn more about bacteria, and in this video, I would like you to pay attention to the structure of a bacteria.
Keep the prod. At about 3.5 billion years old, bacteria are one of the oldest living organisms on Earth. Considering the evolution of life, they are about as distantly related to humans as possible. But wow, are they important to us! They are responsible for a range of diseases, including cholera, tuberculosis, and the plague, amongst others. But they aren't all bad. There are trillions of good bacteria living in your gut that are essential to your health. In fact, there are approximately 10 times more bacterial cells than human cells in your body. They can keep the produce vitamins, prevent tumor formation, help the immune system fight pathogens, and protect against carcinogens, amongst other benefits. Bacterial cells are very small, much smaller than plant and animal cells. They are found practically everywhere on Earth and live in some of the most unusual and seemingly inhospitable places. As a result, they come in lots of different shapes and sizes. Bacteria are unicellular prokaryotes, as we saw in these two videos. Despite being very different shapes and sizes, they contain the same elements. As they are prokaryotes, they do not have a membrane-bound nucleus. The DNA is in the cytoplasm, in the area known as the nucleoid. Bacteria have a flexible cell wall that protects them from physical damage and is exposed to the external surroundings. A flagellum that helps the bacteria to move. Bacteria have two types of DNA, plasmid DNA and chromosomal DNA. The chromosomal DNA carries most of the genetic information. The plasmid DNA forms small loops and carries extra information such as resistance to antibiotics, production of toxins, and tolerance to toxic environments. The ribosome is involved in protein synthesis. The pili enable the bacteria to attach to hosts and surfaces like teeth, intestines, and rocks. They are also involved in DNA exchange between bacteria. So there you have the components of bacteria cells. As bacteria are prokaryotes, they do not have a true nucleus but lose DNA in the nucleoid. They also have loops of plasmid DNA and a flagella and lots of pili.
In the video, there are a few main points that were highlighted regarding the structure of a bacterial cell, so let's go through them. Firstly, a bacterial cell does not have a membrane-bound organelle. Being a single-cell organism, it does not need much compartmentalization as compared to multicellular organisms like plants and animals. Despite not having a nucleus, it still has its own DNA. Each bacterial cell has a single circular DNA as its genetic material. In the video, it was also known as chromosomal DNA that holds most of the genetic information of the bacterial cell. Something unique about bacterial cell, it is enclosed within a cell wall, which serves the same purpose in a plant cell. It is rigid, so it has protective function to protect bacteria from external forces. It also contains ribosomes in order to synthesize protein. Apart from having a single chromosomal DNA, it also has many small circular DNA molecules known as plasmids. And these plasmids carry extra genetic info, as mentioned in the video, to serve specific purpose. I've also missed out the second last point. Bacteria also have flagellum for movement, and some bacterial cells has more than one to aid in the movement of the cell. Not all bacteria is harmful. There are good bacteria that we need in our body And one such source of good bacteria can be found in our intestine. For example, gut bacteria serve as a very important function to provide an optimal environment for our gut bacteria to work. When there's an imbalance in the population of bacteria in our guts, it will cause detrimental impact in our body. For example, diarrhea and other problems as well. As such, we do take in food that helps to promote a healthy gut in our body, and they are known as probiotics. Probiotics is essential in our body, and our body do naturally not naturally, but we do consume food. So food provide a source of good probiotics to cultivate an optimal environment, as we rely on bacteria for other purposes that our body is unable to carry out. So for example, cellulose in plants, we do not have the enzymes to break it down, and we rely on our gut bacteria to do so. So some food that probiotics can be found in includes kimchi, yogurt, and something that we have been drinking since we are a young kid is also Yakult. So you often hear the advertisement lactose bacillus. That is the bacteria that can be found in Yakult. So when we consume it, it will help to promote a healthy gut population. So let's break it down and take a look at the diagram instead. So as mentioned, despite not having a membrane-bound nucleus, the bacteria cell has still its own genetic material, and it often exists as a singular circular DNA. It is typically enclosed by a cell wall. It also has its flagellum for movement, and it also may carry smaller round DNA molecule known as plasmids. It also has ribosomes for protein synthesis, and like animal and plant cells, they do have cell membrane and cytoplasm as well. In your worksheet, I've left you a question to ponder. I'd like you to compare a bacterial cell to an animal cell and a plant cell respectively to identify the similarities and differences, and we'll discuss it in class. We'll now move on to virus. Virus is a very interesting organism, and how does it infect our body? Let's take a look at this animation to understand how virus can be deadly because it attacks our cells and take over our cells' machinery for its own production to multiply in numbers.
Every cell in your body is a tiny factory, constantly making proteins. Your genetic code, or DNA, directs every activity. Protein-making machinery in the cell reads the cell's own DNA and makes sure the cell proteins go where they're needed. Viruses have their own genetic code, but they don't have the machinery to copy their DNA. So viruses need your cell's machinery to reproduce themselves. A virus starts this process by using the keys on its surface to gain entry. Like a Trojan horse, it enters the cell. The virus releases its own DNA into the unsuspecting cell and hijacks the protein-making machinery. Now, this vital cell function becomes an assembly line for new virus particles. No longer in service to your body, the cell now serves the virus, manufacturing thousands of new virus particles, which are released to enslave more cells, thousands and thousands more.
Viruses are very microscopic, even smaller than bacteria, and they are infectious. As you can see on the right hand side, some examples include Ebola, adenovirus, HIV, and bacteriophages. Virus reproduce inside a living host cell. It does not have its own machinery to reproduce. As a result, it has to leech on other host cells that could be animals, plants, and even bacteria. Alright, so virus can also infect bacteria cell and reproduce in it because bacteria has the machinery to make extra copies, multiple copies of genetic material and propagate in numbers. As compared to the bacteria, a virus is smaller, much smaller, and it lacks most cellular structure such as cytoplasm, ribosome, cell membrane as compared to eukaryotic cells like animals and plants. Take note, cytoplasm and ribosomes can be found in bacteria. So that is one difference between virus and bacterial cells. So if you're interested to find out a little bit more about how virus attacks bacterial cell, let's take a look at the mechanism of a bacteriophage.
This robot-like looking creature is not a robot, but a virus. Its name is bacteriophage, which is also known as bacteria eater, because it is a virus that infects bacteria and kills them. If you look at its body, this is its head, this is the sheath, and these are tail fibers. Actually, this bacteriophage goes to the surface of the bacteria and sticks to it, and injects its DNA inside that bacteria. That bacteria, considering that DNA as its own DNA, starts replicating, and copies of the bacteriophage start getting produced. And finally, all these baby viruses burst out of the bacteria, tearing it apart, and the bacteria dies. And if you are interested in such knowledgeable videos, then stay connected with us.
So now let's take a look at the unique structural features of a virus. It may look simple, but this is how a typical virus actually looks like. So it comes in many shapes and sizes, and some other viruses have other features. But these are the two things that can be found in all viruses. One, genetic material. Some viruses have DNA, some have RNA, and some have both. And the genetic material is enclosed by a protein coat. So this is similar to the idea of a membrane like cell membrane and cell wall, but they are not cell membrane and cell wall. So it's just an external layer made up of protein that encloses the genetic material inside a virus. As mentioned, virus can be complicated. Some more complex viruses have additional envelope with protein embedded in them. Often, this envelope protein serves as recognition to identify host cells in order to gain entry. Alright, so when it's complementary, okay, when it's complementary, to the surface of the host cell, it is able to bind, enter, and attack. It attacks by taking over the host cell machinery to reproduce. Right? So it's really very smart in that sense. So at this point of time, I would like you to think a little deeper. Are viruses living or non-living organism? Which category can we place them based on your current understanding of the structure of virus and how they behave? I would like you to pause the video to pen down your thoughts in the box provided. At the moment, there are many literatures and studies that argues that viruses have both living and non-living characteristics, and they're still debating over which category virus should be placed in because it has characteristics of both type of organisms. They seem okay. They can reproduce. All right, like we have seen examples of how viruses can make copies of themselves. However, this can only be done within the host. So some literature argues that viruses can be considered as a living thing because its ability to reproduce. However, some literature argues that viruses are non-living organisms because they need the host machinery for the replication process. As compared to living organisms, they do not move, they do not grow, or they do not have the ability to remove waste materials. Hence, it seems to be more of a non-living organism as compared to living organisms. So this is still open to discussion, and I hope to hear more from you in the classroom. If you are interested, please do more research to find out and come to a conclusion for your own learning. To wrap up, we will be comparing the differences between structural features of a bacteria and virus. So the first basis of comparison is the outer covering. Bacteria has cell wall while virus has protein coat. Secondly, DNA can be found in bacteria, but both DNA and RNA can be found in virus. Cell membrane is present in bacteria but absent in virus. Likewise, cytoplasm and ribosomes can be found in bacteria but not viruses. This marks the end of this lesson, and I hope you can spend some time to answer the checkpoint question. In this table, I've only compared the difference between bacteria and viruses. But for your own learning, you should also create a table to compare the structural differences between bacteria, virus, animal, and plant for your own learning. That's all, and I'll see you back in the classroom.